Lord. I'm Hindol Sengupta. I'm delighted that Rear Admiral Mukul Asthana has joined me today. I invited the Admiral to talk to me about a whole range of issues concerning Muhammad Yunus's comments, the head of the interim government in Bangladesh, his comments on the Bay of Bengal and the broader Bay of Bengal geopolitical situation. Now, the Admiral knows a lot about this. Not only is he, a wide-ranging veteran, but also very critically, he used to be Director General of something called Project Varsha, a naval base that the Indian government, the Indian military is building in the Bay of Bengal to house SSBNs and also some war jetties. Admiral, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and nice to be on your show once again. It's always such a pleasure talking to you.
It's a great pleasure having you on the show, sir. Let me begin by asking you about Muhammad Yunus's comments that Bangladesh is the guardian of the ocean. Of course, he means the Bay of Bengal. But now this seems quite interesting to all of us who look at the geopolitical situation in the Bay of Bengal, because Bangladesh literally has a couple of submarines. I believe they're diesel powered submarines that they bought from China. Bangladesh does not have the required infrastructure to really be the guardian, as it were, of Bay of Bengal. If there is a guardian in Bay of Bengal, it is clearly India. Why do you think Muhammad Yunus would say such a thing? And what do you think is probably going on?
I think before we answer your question directly about the comments by Mr. Muhammad Yunus, I must say that Bangladesh and India have shared very good relations. In the past, we've also had exchange of military officers into each other's training establishments, and I have personally benefited from having done a course at the National Defense College in Dhaka in 2012. So between the two nations, between the two militaries, we've had very good relationships. Person-to-person relationships are also good. In the backdrop, I must also mention that the government of India has, of quite recently, resolved very many outstanding, niggling issues. And the foremost that come to mind are, of course, the resolution of the enclaves that we had on our side, Bangladeshi enclaves on our side, as well as those of India on across the border into Bangladesh. So much has been done on those lines. And post 5th August, whatever has happened has actually surprised the world. And the recent comments by Muhammad Yunus, of course, have not only created flurry, but also a lot of responses from many quarters. My sense is that Mr. Muhammad Yunus, of course, is not an elected president or elected prime minister. He's a selected prime minister. He's a caretaker prime minister of the present interim government. And we all respect him for his economic, prowess. He was the one who brought in the microfinance into Bangladesh some 3 decades ago. But I do not know if he's a very great statesperson or, for that matter, has great knowledge of diplomacy. But being in China, being in Beijing, what he has spoken, of course, stems from the fact that he perhaps was also overwhelmed by the Chinese, who themselves are past masters of diplomacy and realpolitik, as well as influencing and affecting the world. So these may have stemmed also from the fact that he perhaps is desperate. The Bangladeshi economy is in the doldrums. Their garment industry is not doing well, and they desperately want China to come in and help them out. Uh, Having said that, I do not think there is entire veracity with what he has said. The seven sister states of the country are really not isolated. We have always had good connections with the mainland India, through the Siliguri corridor. That corridor has also been strengthened in the recent years, recent decade. We've had better rail connectivity, better air connectivity, and projects are also on to develop the Kaladan project, as well as connectivity between Tripura and Chittagong. through the subroom uh, port. How much progress has been made, of course, is quite affected by whatever is going on in Myanmar and the present state of affairs in Bangladesh. As far as his comments of being the guardian of the Bay of Bengal, it's quite amusing, if I may use the word, because Bay of Bengal, of course, gives certain amount of access to Bangladesh, and they have these important ports of Chittagong, Mongla, and Chalna. But the fact remains that because of very strong tidal streams, these ports are also usable only for certain durations in a day when the tides so permit. The fact that you may be, on the top of the map, which is the north of the map, does not really mean that you are dominating the Indian Ocean region or dominating the Bay of Bengal. It is very different from sitting on a high height on the terrain to say that I'm dominating this ground or this terrain. It's very different from that. Given the fact also that the Indian Navy is a large force present in the Bay of Bengal, we have our East Coast as well as Andaman and Nicobar Command. There are two commands, naval commands, which are located there. And a large number of ports, 8 to 10 ports from where our ships operate and can operate, as compared to their Chittagong and Mongla. Plus, the kind of presence we maintain over the Bay of Bengal through our maritime surveillance aircraft is also phenomenal. So it is quite surprising to have made a remark that they dominate the Indian Ocean region. Yeah, Hindol.
Now, one of the things I'm really glad you mentioned the chicken's neck because there is an assessment that's growing, Admiral, and I want to put that to you that some of these comments, especially comments made in China, have come from a position not of strength but of desperation. In recent weeks, the position of the interim government in Bangladesh has looked weaker than before, especially the coming of Donald Trump in the US has perhaps meant that many of their earlier supporters, including in the US, are no longer in positions of power. There is also a consideration that, in one of the conversations, Trump told Prime Minister Narendra Modi that, in a sense, I'm leaving this to you. Now, he may not have meant exactly leaving it to India, but there was certainly a sense that, the US would not, in a sense, interfere as much as perhaps it was in the past into the Bangladesh situation, and there would be a greater role for India to play. And the third thing is, this whole chicken's neck thing that people bring up again and again. If you look at Rangpur and districts aligning Rangpur, these are increasingly restive areas in Bangladesh, and there is a lot of conversation on whether a sort of mini Balochistan situation might grow in these areas. And perhaps the interim government already feels that it perhaps does not have enough resources to absolutely keep sovereignty in many of these places. So all of this means greater desperation, and therefore a trip to China. China, of course, sending a special plane to pick him up, and therefore almost a quid pro quo married with desperation has led to these comments. I put this situation to you, and I wonder what you make of it.
So I think it's a very you have rounded up a lot of things in this question, and I wish to say that we all are aware as to what has happened after the new dispensation has come in USA, and the earlier support which Bangladesh had been getting uh, covertly or overtly for that matter, has reduced much, if not completely stopped from the West. And that is why this fascination with China. And in my sense, China is a wise, old, smart country, and they realize that having very great connections with not only Bangladesh but also Pakistan, with whatever is happening on the CPEC and the Gwadar port, it may not be such a wise thing for China in the long run. They would rather engage with India where they stand to gain. Having said that, you are also right that in desperation that he has gone and he's been asking to come and help them. And I mentioned that the economy is in doldrums. Their major industry, which was clothes and garments, is not doing well. So this was sort of a desperate attempt. We all know the vulnerability of the chicken egg. We have people have spoken at length ad nauseum on this, but I wish to also state that any misadventure from the adversary would not be easy, you see, because it's being a lower riparian state. And if you see the terrain of the area, uh, it would be very difficult for them to negotiate the tributaries and sandy areas which are there in Rajshahi and east of the Siliguri corridor. For whatever reasons, if the uh, lower tributaries were to be flooded, inundated by Teesta waters or whatever, some calamity happens or even otherwise, they will find themselves in a very, very delicate situation. So I do not think we need to worry too much about that. Yes, what you mentioned about the change of demography, the alteration of demography, that is something which I'm sure the present incumbent government is also taking note of that very, very well.
I want to also. I'm really glad you brought up this question about the about China being a a far more mature and wiser geopolitical player in that sense, and especially bringing in the whole situation in CPEC because this is particularly relevant. The Chinese had invested a lot of money in CPEC, hoping to make use of that route, including building a massive airline, airport in Gwadar, but that airport is barely being used. Balochistan is totally restive. Chinese engineers have been killed by Baloch rebels in Balochistan, and CPEC is deeply in question. Would the Chinese like to mire themselves in one more conflict in this manner in Bangladesh?
Very well brought out by you what has happened to Gwadar, CPEC, and its effect on China. The fact that they have gone into hiring special security agencies to safeguard their own infrastructure and personnel. Uh, You see, I feel they may not want to go the whole hog into Bangladesh that way for the simple reason that the present incumbent prime minister is elected member. Tomorrow is a selected person. Tomorrow, when they have an elected government, very many decisions being taken by the present government could actually be altered and reversed for that matter. So that is something which needs to be seen. And apart from the fact that India is monitoring the Bay of Bengal, this is virtually our backyard. There are other nations too which have keen interest in this area. Uh, China has other problems also on their eastern seaboard, in the Indo-Pacific, along the Malacca Straits. So, how much will they be able to commit and be able to come into the Bay of Bengal is something which will needs to be watched carefully.
I'm really glad you mentioned the question of the Malacca Straits, Admiral, because obviously now with the tariffs that the US has announced, and some of the heaviest are on China, there would be greater Chinese reluctance, I feel, to embroil themselves further in any sort of regional conflict, especially in South Asia, because there's already considerable issues that might crop up with their trade, especially because of these tariffs. I wanted to know your thoughts.
I think very well brought out by you, Hindol. China and US have a very large share of market with each other. And the fact that the present dispensation in US has gone in for imposing tariffs to various countries, and most nations are, in fact, all nations are recalibrating, reworking out their requirements of bilateral trades with USA. It stands to reason that China will have to look very hard as to what they are getting into with respect to uh, engaging USA or even angering US when it comes to their any excursions in the Bay of Bengal.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Myanmar, Admiral. That also came up. You had mentioned Myanmar earlier in an answer to a question. That situation seems to get more and more volatile with each passing day. And I dare say after the earthquake, it'll only get worse because both sides in the conflict have been hurt in the earthquake, and a lot of common people have been hurt. So this conflict is probably going to rage on, even further, and there could be even greater disruption in that country. How do you think that would impact the whole Bangladesh situation?
So, the Rakhine and the Rohingya issues in Myanmar have been flaring up. Some of our projects with Myanmar have come to standstill because of that, I mentioned earlier. What with the Arkan army also, there are problems right now. And these are compounded by the fact that they have increasing and greater influence of China into Myanmar. I think somewhere else we had spoken that China has helped them make very wide, long, and strong highways which virtually run north south, uh, which are quite capable of operating their high performance fighter aircraft if it comes to that. So, whilst Myanmar leans more towards China, uh, I'm sure they would have also realized that India was the first responder when it came to Op Brahma with the recent earthquake that has afflicted them. So these are very contentious issues, they are delicate situations, and I'm sure our nation is quite well capable of handling these.
There has also been conversation about what kind of facilities Myanmar is making available to China. How do you think that will change? And I'm obviously talking about military facilities here.
So I mentioned to you about their highways, which will be able to provide access, operations, transit, and stage through operations for their high performance aircraft. Similarly, their military bases, military airfields for their other larger aircraft can also be made available if so required. And their ports, in fact, Yangon and other ports also are quite accessible to China when it comes to coming to that. They have Coco Island of the Myanmar, for that matter. They have a monitoring station there. China has made a monitoring station, and we are keeping a close eye on that.
There's been Indian suspicion that this is more than just a monitoring station, Admiral. Your assessment.
I think our government, our armed forces are quite well seized of the facilities presently existing in Coco Island and along the coast of Myanmar. And what is being planned and created is also under surveillance. And not only India, but there are other nations too, including US, who have a good chain of coastal monitoring stations, especially in Bangladesh. Of course, that is for monitoring weather stations, etc., because it's a cyclone prone country. But that also helps monitor other activities. So these things are something which are very well known to our agencies.
Let's, as we come towards the end of this conversation, let's focus on what India is doing. We mentioned Project Varsha to begin with in this conversation, but what is worth discussing also is the elaborate plans of revamping our Andaman Command that's currently underway in those islands. Admiral, talk to us a little bit about your assessment of these elaborate plans of completely revamping the scope and scale of the Andaman Command that's currently underway.
So let me take you along the contours of the Bay of Bengal. And since we spoke with Bangladesh, I'll say they have access to the northern Bay of Bengal, and their coastline is about 700 nautical miles. If we also include their Chittagong, Cox's Bazar, and Saint Martin Islands, and three major ports that they have, I mentioned to you. On the other hand, India has got the Bay of Bengal, with Eastern Naval Command, which is situated in Visakhapatnam, and the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which is in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Uh, Between these two long coastlines and the chain of islands, India has about 8 to 10 ports from where their ships operate and can be based and operated from. We have our surveillance capabilities, the Indian Air Force as well as the Indian Navy, where the area of operation can be kept under aerial surveillance virtually 24/7, 365. There are also plans, as you mentioned, Project Varsha. That's a new naval base which the Indian Navy is creating, where our SSBNs will be housed, and which will also have facilities to berth ships along with submarines. And Andaman Nicobar Command, the government has gone ahead with major revamp of the existing situations. There are 4 air bases there, of which 2 can undertake fighter operations, and 2 more, one in the north, that is INS Kohasa at Shibpur, and INS Baz at the Campbell Bay, where the extension of runway is under progress. Similarly, there is also very wide, varied infrastructure development at Utkrosh, that is the Port Blair Harbour, as well as harbours in Shibpur and in Campbell Bay. The existing Orbat in Andaman Nicobar is also planned to be enhanced in the future, especially since we have Malacca Strait very close by, and there is a large amount of traffic that passes through this. It is in our interest that we keep Bay of Bengal and the southern Bay of Bengal, especially, also under surveillance. So I think there are great plans to enhance this.
In conclusion, Admiral, I want to ask you, where do you see the Bay of Bengal and contestation in the Bay of Bengal go from here? Because, the entire area is obviously, there is contestation there is growing. There is Chinese influence, Myanmar is in distress, Bangladesh also question mark. How do you see this entire contestation in the Bay of Bengal go from here on?
I think whilst no nation would be, careless enough to discount the adversary's capabilities or potential adversary's capabilities, the fact remains that when it comes to Bangladesh, they have few surface combatants. They have 2 submarines. Both are of Chinese vintage. And how much is their operability and how much are they operational is something which is quite questionable. And growing Chinese influence in Bay of Bengal has been observed by us for quite some time now. They have their fishing fleet, which is a maritime militia, which operate and carry out surveys in the name of fishing activity and fishing survey, but they do more than that, we are all aware. But that is once again kept under surveillance. Whilst it will always be good to keep your guard up, I don't see any great desperation here, because not only India is well capable, Indian Navy and Indian Air Force are well capable to handle these issues. There is also, India is also part of the Quad, and it is also in US interest to keep the Indo-Pacific free of such any potential, threats or areas which could create any trouble for any of the democratic powers which want a rules-based order at sea.
Leave it at that, Admiral. Rear Admiral Mukul Asthana, thanks very much for talking to me today. The Bay of Bengal is heating up once again. Comments from Muhammad Yunus, Myanmar up in flames, Bangladesh restive, and many other things. Thank you for walking us through the situation in Bay of Bengal, and indeed, in a sense, confirming that India is very much in control as of now. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Hindol. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.